3 minutes.
Thank you, I'll keep quick. Thank you, Mr. Russo. Recently, I was called into the Borough President's office with 3 members of the staff, including the Borough President's counsel. I was asked about Community Board 10 and what I found out. I was not there, though, to tell them what I found out about Community Board 10. I was there about one member who insulted me at a committee meeting and refuses to apologize. Although,
Mr. Press, I'll remind you, personal attacks against board members, staff members, or elected officials will result in the individual being asked to leave the meeting. If you're gonna go down that road, we're gonna stop right
I
here.
am not naming any person.
It doesn't matter if you're naming people, it's there. Thank you, you're done. Thank you, you're done.
Manager is involved. And
Thank
it's
you, you're
gonna go
done.
to the- it's gonna
Thank
go
you,
to
you're
the
done.
Department of Investigation.
Next speaker is
Conflict of
Lou
Interest.
Rocco,
I'm
Westchester
sorry,
Square
man. You're gonna be caught.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Because he told me to call me.
Okay.
Good, go,
Good
you got
evening,
3 minutes.
everybody. Chair,
Yourself back to the phone.
members, my name is Lou Rocco, Westchester Square City. I've been doing this quite a few years. I woke up this morning with air horns blowing on Overland Street because vehicles parked on a hydrant can't get through. I wish the captain was here to understand what's going on in our community. We are at the lowest of low with respect for police officers. I go out there and I hear people say they hate the cops. For us to get back on our feet, we need to work together. Instead of shutting down streets, I have Overland Street where they come speeding. Today I made 4 911 calls. Do you know why? Do you know why? There was an ambulance stuck with people in there. You don't know if it's your mother, you don't know if it's a police officer. Stuck there. I called 911 and they said, oh, it's a double parked car. No, it's an ambulance trying to get through. I got the numbers, I got the operator's numbers, 4 calls. Can't get a cop. Somebody's in there. Could be you dying. This ambulance on Overland Street, it's a way out to another hospital. It's also a way into our hospital. When you have a hospital in the vicinity, you need to make sure that these roadways are clear. A week ago, I got on to the police department. They towed a car away, being there double parked all day. We're getting cars on hydrants for 2 days. I got the plate information, $600 in summonses, 3 plates, always parks on a hydrant. What's going on? Please. All right? Now we have scaffolding. The biggest thing is the scaffolding. What scam is all this scaffolding coming through? I don't sleep at night. I smell marijuana, alcohol, and I held back. Last night I called. When I was out there, I see 1 officer in a car. Is this something new? We start with 1 police officer in a car? I don't even know if they responded to that call. This is going on. And then when I hear in Westchester Square that it's an isolated incident that somebody gets shot in the back of the head and dies, I want to applaud the detectives from the 4-5 who worked on it. They got information from our community. The man is under arrest. But that is not an isolated incident. That's a murder. All right? He's under arrest now. On Revere, which this community board, I don't know if it's all the members here, they voted for housing that put real criminals there. And do you know what these houses bring? They bring more criminals. Criminals love criminals. We had a guy, if you read on it, 18 shots in the street. If you were there buying a cup of coffee at the time, you wouldn't be here. 18 shots. We get the police department to put a vehicle there for 2 weeks running with a light blinking.
Lou, you got 10 seconds.
Okay? So, why isn't that cop doing something? In the square, we need real police officers, not a person of security who harasses people of different origin and stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Rocco.
My
Thank you.
neighbor
Thank
got
you.
mugged. And
Thank
this is
you.
what I've been saying all the
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next 3 speakers are all here to speak about Hart Island transfer. Before they speak on that, and I'll just make sure everyone's clear on what the situation is with Hart Island as part of the executive committee we talked about. In 2015, this board passed a resolution approving or supporting the transfer of Hart Island from the Department of Corrections to the Department of Parks. Now the council member has brought up the fact that there's new legislation coming through the city council, 4 proposed bills. So when a resolution has already been passed, we can't go back and relitigate or redo that. So what we're going to do is at our October Parks Committee meeting, they're gonna vote on a resolution to affirm or reject the 2015 resolution. If they affirm the 2015 resolution, then we support the transfer and we move on from there. If they vote to reject it or to rescind it, then in November, we will take it up again in the Parks Committee as a new open item. So while I appreciate Ms. Kurtz, Mr. McMahon, and Ms. Seebeck, and if you guys want to speak, you're more welcome to speak. The place for you guys to really speak is at the October 10th Parks meeting. So I will allow you if you want to speak now for 3 minutes each, but again, this topic is really going to come out at the October Parks meeting. So I'll leave it at that. Mr. McMahon?
Thank you, Committee.
You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I would just like to get this on the record so you can all think of it before we go. My name is Thomas McMahon, and I have been a resident of City Island for over 60 years. I have saw Hart's Island at its beautifulest, and I grew up with my classmates, Cormac McHenry, whose father was the prison warden, John Vaughan, whose father was the ferry operator, and Joe Bartels, my next door neighbor, was the operating engineer for the island. It was a beautiful island. Then the city kind of let it go in the 70s and 80s. And then in late 1980s, I was assigned as an environmental police officer to do an environmental assessment of Hart Island for the city of New York, for the city council, so that they could determine what use we could use for City Island. And they were thinking many. But during my inspection, I found that the Hart's Island to be a very dangerous island. I found it to contain a tremendous amount of jet fuel. When we were young and we were kids at St. Mary's Star and Sea, we would remember going underneath our desks when they raised the Nike missiles back in the 50s. So there's a tremendous amount of jet fuel still out there on the island. There's hundreds of thousands of gallons, because Hart's Island was a Navy base, of lead-based paint that's never been removed. There's PCBs from all the mechanic shops with 55-gallon drums all over the place. But my last point I want to make here is, the most dangerous part of Hart's Island is the right side, which is considered the southern side. During my inspection, I found, and I also inspected the morgue, I found that they used that side to bury everybody that they didn't understand what they died from. Kind of taking bodies from, let me just quickly, I'm sorry, just if you could just give me 1 minute. Thank you. From 2 islands. One is out at the end of Long Island, Plum Island, and the other one is Northern Island. So they kind of would take things. Now, in the early 80s, it was the AIDS epidemic. Everybody was so nervous about AIDS and what's going on with AIDS. They don't know what to do with it. They buried a lot of people over there with AIDS. But that is not all they buried out there.
Mr. McMahon, time's up, thank you.
Okay, can I just...
You know what, figure it out for the
That's
10th
fine.
meeting and join us at that meeting.
Thank you so
Great.
much for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Curtis?
As a resident of City Island for over 50 years, I'm here to voice my objection to the proposed transfer of Hart Island from corrections to parks. The current bill has no parameters, and the thought of open access to Hart Island through what is a narrow residential street with limited parking would be an accident waiting to happen. In the 60s and 70s, there was access to Hart Island when Phoenix House was on the island. It was mayhem every weekend. My parents didn't buy their dream home because it was on Fordham Street. Sound travels over the water, and in addition to the residents on Fordham Street, the quality of life for residents on the east side of City Island can be adversely affected by a park on Hart Island. I am in no way opposed to relatives, homeless groups, veterans, and AIDS activists visiting the grave sites in respectful remembrance. There is greater access for relatives as a result of the NYCLU lawsuit, and my feeling is both the information regarding Hart Island burials and the visiting process should be refined. As a task force to review and recommend streamlining the process should be created with City Islanders as members. This is the community that would be most affected. The current process is not difficult. When a few years ago I scheduled a trip to the gazebo, it was the beginning of May, and I was able to go that month. Trips to the grave sites are scheduled twice a month, with trips twice each those days. Many people sign up to go but don't show up. There's a wait list, and you may be able to go earlier than your scheduled date. Each time I have visited the island, about 8 to 10 visitors were on each trip. There is capacity for 300 people a month for scheduled trips, yet only an average of 24 visit a month. The Department of Corrections personnel are respectful, kind, and compassionate. In no way did I feel like I was in prison. The island is well maintained, it is calm, peaceful, and serene. There is no need for a transfer to the parks with the potential of a public park, which would inconvenience residents and cost the city millions of dollars. There are 1,700 parks in New York City, many in need of repair and upkeep. The cost to make Hart Island public would be astronomical. Toxic waste remediation, buildings raised, Nike missile silos will need to be secured.
30 seconds.
Toxic waste, the infrastructure for water and sewer installed. Monies would be better spent on existing parks.
Please go to the Parks Committee meeting
Yes,
October 10th. Kathy Seebeck? You have 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the email, Mr. Russo, explaining the process. In 2015, our civic voted to approve this, and it came to community board. A lot of us felt our community was not well informed, so a few of us went around. We had petitions. We garnered around 800 in time for the city council meeting, and we spoke at the city council meeting. Our majority certainly outweighed the vote back then in 2015. Most of our community was unaware, so we were trying to educate them of the transfer. They had no idea, even the people that lived on the block. The first city council meeting, those bills died in committee, or after the hearing, the council person that introduced those bills was not reelected. So these bills were reintroduced in 2018. So the bills that you voted on no longer exist. So we're asking in the future, which you gave me the procedure for it, to take a vote on the new bills. We went to the city council meeting in May of this year, and they do state that people cannot visit their loved ones. They can. After that meeting in May, I went 2 times. I went on the boat 2 times with my friend as a guest to a gravesite, and they were respectful. I didn't feel like I was in a prison. It was so well maintained. I personally feel it's disrespectful to people to picnic or party on the graves of other people. I don't see the need. It was well maintained, much more well maintained than parks. Takes care of our own parks. The ferry service and most of the things, I'll just repeat what Terry said. I agree with
You don't have to,
everything.
we heard it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. Am I over? Oh. Okay, so.
You don't have to take the whole minute.
I understand we have to go through these hurdles now, so we'll have to, just to make sure I'm correct, we have to go to the Parks Committee, and speak to them. And if they do not reaffirm, that's the question I want to go through. And I also have petitions and recent surveys from our community. I brought them with me. I don't know if you'd like them now, that our community is opposed on these surveys. Bring them to the parks.
Thank you. Again, I said before, from a procedure standpoint, this will be the Parks Committee meeting. If there are petitions, bring them there. Don't bring me 2015 petitions, bring me 2019 petitions, and we'll take it from there. Okay, I have, yes, I hear.
As a point of information, the Orthodox Christians hopefully celebrate having picnics on the grave sites for their Easter and for visits. So it's not, whether it's disrespectful or not, it's their culture, just a point of information.
Thank you, Ernie. Okay, last, we got 3 representatives here who, from Senator Sepulveda's office, Miriam Dorado. Miriam? Oh, shit, okay.
Good evening, everybody. The senator sent you a happy call. He wanna go back on session on January 2020. Office gonna be offering a fair college next October. And we're gonna have a housing workshop too with NYSHA, but we don't have the date yet, but it's gonna be in October. I have some flyers on the table that everybody can take. Our office hours are from 9 to 3, Monday through Thursday, and Friday 9 to 12. Everybody's welcome to any concern or issues that they have, and we're gonna be very happy to help with anything that is bothering. And our phone number is 718-991-3161. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Dorado. From Senator Benedetto's office, Leon Tony.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Chair, go ahead. Colonel. Yes.
Oh, with respect to Hart Island, you remember Hart Island used to be a anti-missile army base. And so have we cleared that? Does the federal government still own property there?
Again, we'll deal with that at the Parks Committee meeting on the 10th.
So how can
I don't know
we
what the answer is, we'll
transfer
find out by that, but
property that belongs to the federal government within the city?
I think, I don't know, we'll
Is
find
that
out.
clear, or have they gotten all?
The Department of Corrections has the island right now.
Pardon me?
The Department of Corrections has the island right now.
No, the federal government
No.
has no more say?
Not that I know of, no.
And all this toxic chemicals that are there are part of
I
the federal government's responsibility.
understood. Get this talking.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to make an announcement that tomorrow, the Assembly members are going to be holding a press conference in City Island. It's going to be at the City Island Gateway at 1 p.m. The address for the City Island Gateway is 663 City Island Avenue. The purpose of the press conference is 2 things. One of them is to announce that the Assembly member was able to secure $2,000 in state funding for the City Island Oyster Reef Project. For those who may not be familiar with the project, basically it's a project where it collects oyster shells, which are then later on used to create oyster reefs along coastal areas. You can read more about it like in the Bronx Times. They did an article about it on page 26. The other thing is also the Assembly member is going to be next year when the Assembly goes back into session, is to introduce a bill that would offer restaurants like a tax credit for donating oyster shells to oyster projects such as the one in City Island. So basically, the credit would be that for every 1 pound of the oyster shell, they would get 10 cents. So they can do this up to a maximum of $1,000. Currently, right now, there is a version in the Senate. Once it passes the Senate, then it'll go to the Assembly member, and the Assembly member would carry it over. And just real quick, just want to give a shout out to Senator Biaggi, because she's actually one of the co-sponsors on the Senate side. And real quick, why this is important, if you're just thinking oyster shells, what's the big deal about it? Oysters are important because of the fact that, for one thing, they They are natural water filters. So just a fun fact, one oyster can filter about 50 to 80 gallons of water. A lot of people don't know that. I just learned about it today. The other thing is that the oyster reef, they actually act as like a type of protective barrier against hurricanes. So as many of you remember, Hurricane Katrina caused like a lot of damage. So what's good about this is basically you're fighting nature with nature. So this is a good thing. And from a business perspective, this is something that would help businesses as far as like to reduce costs. So for restaurants, the way they would get rid of the restaurant shelves is like they have to cart it away, which is expensive. So what's good about this project is that it reduces the cost. So instead of them spending money to move the shelves like at a faraway distance, they're recycling it, and they're recycling it in the community. So this is something that's this is more than just something like just for City Island. This is something that's benefiting City Island. This is something that's benefiting Community Board 10, New York City, the state of New York. So we all benefit from this. So again, I encourage everyone to please come to the press conference tomorrow. I'll repeat the address. It's City Island Gateway at 663 City Island Avenue. This will be held at 1 p.m. So please come out and support. Thank you very much.
From Congressmember Ocasio-Cortez's office, Noreen Arthur.
So, you update, as anyone with a pulse can tell you, the House will be opening an impeachment inquiry against the President. Our office is in support of that. Alongside with congressional accountability, we just rolled out a package of bills this week called the Just Society, which aims to address the historic levels of economic inequality in the U.S. So that includes provisions to strengthen renters' rights, update a federal poverty level, and make things easier for people who go to housing court so that they have a right to counsel. Locally, we've opened up the nominations for service academies, so if anyone you know is interested in attending any of the 4 service academies, there's an application on our website. You can also send an email to aoc.nominations@mail.house.gov. If anyone is interested in serving on the committee to help us nominate a student, you can send an email to the same email address. If you're a veteran or you graduated from any of these academies, we would welcome a conversation with you. In addition to that, some of you may have heard in the Bronx Neck area, there have been some removals of mailboxes. We were informed by the Postal Service that they were removing them due to low volume. They have a threshold of 15 letters a day. If mailboxes aren't getting that much, they will be removing them. Contrary to what some people have been informed, that is not a directive from our office, so I just wanted to take an opportunity to clear that up, that it was a decision from USPS. Additionally, last month we held a town hall in our turnaround public housing. We'll be hosting another town hall next Thursday in Queens at Lafayette City. I've left flyers in the back as well as newsletters. If you'd like to sign up for our quarterly newsletter, please go to our website to sign up. Finally, just wanted to give an update on our casework. After we did our 200 days report, we found that we've opened 518 constituent cases just this year and have closed 350 of them. And with that, I also have some constituent services flyers in the back. If you need to contact our caseworker, we're co-located with Assemblymember Reyes at 1973 Westchester Avenue. Thank you.
Motion to close public participation.
Motion to close. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes of the Community Board 10 meeting on June 20th, 2019, and the public hearing on August 6th, 2019?
Motion.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Let's move on to, there's no Borough President's report this month, so we'll move on to the short District Manager's report.
I think it's just a 5-5, I'm not